This week in layoffs, which is one of our go-to segments, unfortunately here. This week, we're talking about Yuga Labs. So Yuga Labs had a big round of layoffs and some big announcements from their founder, who has been reinstated as CEO, co-founder Greg Solano. So he made a big tweet thread about this. We covered in recent news them kind of divesting from some of the new gaming IP and co-development that they'd been spinning up and giving those back to the co-developers. So we're already kind of seeing moves of a refocus from Yuga. And for those that are not as in the Web3 weeds, lucky for you. But those not familiar with Yuga, they own the CryptoPunks IP, OG NFT collection, the Bored Apes NFT collection, a lot of gaming IP, most originally known for Bored Apes, and then acquiring several other notable NFT brands. So first of all, like a couple of takeaway quotes from the announcement from the cryptodaily.co.uk article. Yuga Labs CEO Greg Solano faced a challenging day. He conveyed the company employees in a message subsequently shared with the public. And in all hands, he said, the creative first spirit that drove this company from inception has been getting muddied by labyrinthian corporate process. We work hard and we care, but somehow we end up with groups and committees. We plan more than we ship. Creator royalties were thriving and made our ecosystem electric. Now we're in hard mode. So they laid off a pretty large percentage of their staff with this, and we know that they're winding down a lot of their gaming initiatives. Supposedly, they're still going to be focusing on their other side, Metaverse, which I'm still not sold is the optimal play for them. So I'm developing kind of a new thesis, and I'm working this through in real time. Xander, I want to hear what you think of it. I would say, while my sort of faith in what Web3 adds to gaming continues to be solid, the specifics of my thesis, I think, keep evolving. And one thing I'm thinking about a lot lately is I think that Web3 native IP is pretty worthless. And I think that there's a conflation of IP that gets big in the Web3 space versus the technology. So what I find myself thinking about is like I find my own thesis getting kind of increasingly humble and practical, which is just this idea of Web3 technology as Lego pieces for game design. More and more I'm focusing around that. And I think when we see stuff like this with Yuga, it's just proof like, okay, you made a huge Web3 IP. At the end of the day, where does that get you? You reach the top of a small mountain, but it's active repellent in the current ecosystem as far as like, what is that IP going to do for bringing a game to market at the end of the day? Not saying this will be the case forever, but, candidly, and we're friends at Yuga and working in their gaming division, but what does it do for a game to slap a Bored Ape or another famous Web3 native IP on it? Like, I think in the current state, it's only active repellent for gamers. What are your thoughts on this? And Web3 IP companies, which I'm separating from Web3 technology companies, trying to use that as a masthead to move into gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point is valid in that if any IP is valuable, Bored Ape is valuable. My gut is that Bored Apes still have some juice in it. And like, maybe it's just because I have an affinity for the IP.
How does Bored Ape let you expand your funnel of your game? That's, I think, the thesis that hasn't been proven out, that keeps failing in Web3.
Well, I think it gets in Web3 native users, right? But that's the main thing, is right? It gets in Web3 native users. But I think the point that you made, the broader point that you made, which is that Web3 IP isn't inherently valuable for growing to mainstream audiences. I think that's true. And it's like, how do you get brand affinity? It's you spend time with the brand. Like, why do people like Disney? Because they grew up watching Disney movies, they go to Disney World. Now, whenever anything Disney ships, it's just like by default. Most people don't have any affinity for Web3 products because they haven't spent much time with them. Bored Apes, I don't know why I like Bored Apes. It's actually kind of like embarrassing. I like that IP for whatever reason. But I think like, Neo Tokyo is obviously an IP you have an affinity for. There are these brands that we like, but they're not mainstream IP, right? It's not Disney.
Yeah, none of this is selling short. Like, I think like Yuga is undoubtedly kings of the hill within Web3. And there's a lot of power, I think, for driving games to the Web3 audience. But as we talk about all the time, it's such a tiny audience. Like, that can't be your North Star of who you're building your games for. And so it's like you get a boost when you're going after this tiny audience, but then you get a punishment when you expand top of funnel. So there's a number of games that here at Uptick we're working on breaking mainstream this year that are using Web3 tech. I think IP is pretty secondary to those. It's just like, is there a cool game here? Is the Web3 tech, ultimately, to boil it down, is it making the economy more compelling? I think that's like the core thesis right here is like, can we onboard people to a fun game that's economy is more compelling because of the technology aspects of Web3? Yeah. But yeah, that's the end of my rant for today. But there's now like a failed thesis of a powerful Web3 IP lets you better bring games to market. Like if Yuga can't validate that thesis with the current mainstream sentiment, I don't think anyone can.
Yeah, I mean, the only one who's competitive is maybe Axie. And they've also, I think, in most cases, struggled to bring that IP to the mainstream.
But the difference with Axie is it's a game company.
Yes.
You can have your opinions on whether you like the game, but it's an IP, it's a gaming IP. It's not a clout-based and status-based IP that is trying to turn into a game. So I do think it's a bit apples and oranges.
Yeah. I still try and play Web3 games, fairly frequently. Probably once or twice a month, I'll just download a random Web3 game. I know you've actually gone way deeper. I mean, what are the Web3 games that you've enjoyed recently that you think are reasonable? And is it because you're a DGen or is it because the games are good?
No, I mean, to be candid, like a lot of the stuff that I spent my time playing the last year are still in that like more niche area of GameFi.
Right.
It's still at the end of the day, gamifying, speculating on something. That's separate from my thesis for successful games, which is like one of our partners, Finn, we brought 500,000 players into their game called Buddy Arena last month, which is it's a mobile, approachable MOBA game, like proven genre, free-to-play economy, Web3 stuff on the back end, the Web 2.5 mullet. And hey, you can bring 500,000 people into that using traditional UA tactics. But like that's very different from like GameFi and these more speculation first games.
Which seem to be the ones that are actually getting traction, right? That's with all the folks that we talk to, that's with games that are getting traction in Web3, generally, from my experience talking to these folks, they all still have a financial component, which, I mean, fine, people care about money.
For now. I mean, this is we've talked about Heroes of Mavia, we're talking about some of the work that Uptick's doing. I do think we're going to see this summer, we've already got the first few examples of this, but it's going to become the norm that there's just these mobile games that have million plus users. And they have some Web3 stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be novel for a few more months. And then it's just going to be boring. It's like, yep, this game's in the top 10 and it happens to have some Web3 stuff if you want to do it.
Right.
Excited for Web3 gaming's boring future, in other words.
Right.